Game of Thrones is one of the most popular television shows ever created. Despite the show's tendency towards using fantasy in the form of dragons, giants, and an army of ice zombies led by a leader called the Night King, the show also parallels quite closely to histories and cultures of the past. It is important to note that Game of Thrones is definitely not overtly based on Anglo Saxon culture or any history for that matter, but there are obvious connections. In this video, I will highlight a few of these connections and show where a study of Old English and its literature can be used to become a better viewer of Game of Thrones. The first parallel is the most obvious one. Westeros, the setting of Game of Thrones, looks extremely similar to Great Britain. This side-by-side map shows that Westeros looks like an inverted and enlarged Ireland with Britain on top of it. Even more interesting is that Great Britain and Westeros are both divided into 7 different kingdoms, known as a heptarchy.
I'm the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. I was born to rule the 7 kingdoms.
The Old English beast of battle theme is extremely prominent in Game of Thrones. In the show, House Stark is identified with the wolf.
The direwolf is a sigil of your house.
In Old English literature, the beasts are often an omen for the loss of a battle since they prey on the dead. But in the show, wolves are used in battle, they fight the dead, and they are a symbol of pride. This reminds me of line 181 in Exodus, where the poet writes, "Area wolfas," which translates into battle wolves. In Game of Thrones, the Starks are battle wolves.
And what do they say of Robb Stark in the north?
They call him the Young Wolf.
And?
They say he rides into battle on the back of a giant direwolf. They say he can turn into a wolf himself when he wants. They say he can't be killed.
In Old English literature, exiles and outlaws are part of the beast of battle trope. According to Sarah Higley, exiles were meant to live with and be hunted like wolves. She writes, "The wolf's head is a sort of verbal reality, pointing to the fact that these outlaws are no longer human in a fundamental way. The outlaw was outside communal, kingly, and heavenly law."
There are no direwolves south of the wall.
While she's speaking metaphorically, Game of Thrones takes this idea and turns it up to 11. The Starks and the North leave the 7 kingdoms to be ruled on their own, making them exiles. And Robb Stark is hunted and killed for it. The head of his wolf is sewed onto his body, giving him the symbol of an exile, a wolf's head. There's another character, Brandon Stark, who's connected to another beast of battle, the Raven. In this show, Brandon Stark is what's called the three-eyed raven, meaning he can see everything in the past and the present. He can also take control of animals, and he often does that with ravens or wolves. When he is a raven, Brandon flies over the approaching enemy, the Night King. In this way, Game of Thrones parallels to the traditional beast of battle trope. A battle is coming. Knowing Old English can also prove to predict events in the show. While it takes us seasons to figure out that Brandon, also known as Bran, is a three-eyed raven, an Old English scholar could predict it from episode 1, because Bran is the Old English word for raven or crow. This shows just how important translating Old English text is to a study of Game of Thrones.
You can't kill it, you know.
Why not?
Because the raven is you.
The final connection I want to show involves a close reading and speculation of these lines from Beowulf. Here, a wyrm, or a dragon, is described by the word stiachart, which means stark-hearted or courageous heart. The latter is where Game of Thrones' Stark in the Stark family comes from. Stiark is the Old English word for firm or unyielding. These lines are particularly interesting because the dragon is described as Stark. This parallels to Game of Thrones in a way that is almost too uncanny to be coincidental. In the show, Jon Snow, a member of the Stark family, is actually found out to be a Targaryen, a member of the family who identifies with the dragon. In Beowulf, the hero is a foil with this dragon. Jon Snow serves as a type of foil to the Targaryens until it is revealed that he is one. It seems that these lines predict the biggest twist in Game of Thrones.